You know, they say ignorance is bliss. I guess that's why he never saw it coming. Our life together was like a well-rehearsed play. Every act, every scene, perfectly in sync. But, let's be real, perfection is a facade, isn't it? We had the house, the kids, the twice-a-week date nights. From the outside, we were the it couple. But inside, it felt like something was missing. Don't get me wrong, he was a good man. Attentive, caring, the kind of husband you read about in romance novels. But that's just it. It was all too storybook for me. Then came the new chapter, my fitness journey. It was his idea, actually. You should take some time for yourself, he'd said. I think he thought it would fix whatever he sensed was off. Sweet, but naive. The gym became my escape. The weights, the treadmill, they didn't judge or expect anything from me. And then, there was Jake. My personal trainer. He was everything my husband wasn't: spontaneous, unpredictable, exciting. He listened to me, not just to respond, but to understand. It started with casual flirting, harmless, I thought. But we all know how these things go, don't we? It wasn't long before our training sessions became less about fitness and more about us. Sneaking texts, secret meetups. The thrill of it all was intoxicating. I was addicted to the rush, the secrecy. It was a high, a much-needed diversion from the monotony of my happy marriage. Each time I lied to my husband about running late at the gym or grabbing drinks with the girls, a part of me felt guilty. But the thrill, it overshadowed everything else. He never questioned it, just smiled and took care of the kids, blissfully unaware. Looking back now, I wonder if deep down he knew. If he chose to turn a blind eye, or if he truly was that oblivious. Either way, the affair was a ticking time bomb, set to detonate and shatter everything we had built. But in those moments, I didn't care. I was too caught up in the whirlwind of excitement and passion. It's funny, isn't it? How we convince ourselves that we're in control, that we can handle the flames without getting burned. I thought I had it all figured out. But life has a way of showing you just how little you know. It's like I was there but not really there, you know? Sitting at the dinner table, staring at my plate, my mind a million miles away. I could hear him, my husband, trying to make conversation, trying to bridge the gap that was slowly widening between us. But all I could think about was Jake, his smile, his touch. I was losing myself, and I didn't know how to stop it, or if I even wanted to. He started picking up on it, of course. How could he not? I was becoming a ghost in my own home. Is everything okay? He'd ask, his eyes filled with that worry that used to make me feel loved. Now it just felt suffocating. I'm fine, I'd say, the lie tasting bitter in my mouth. But he knew. He had to. The nights I spent with Jake grew longer, more frequent. It wasn't just about the excitement anymore. It was an escape, a break from the reality that I felt was choking me. I'd come home late, finding him asleep on the couch, waiting for me. Guilt? Sure. It was there, nagging at the back of my mind, but I brushed it aside. I was in too deep. Then came the day he found out. I'd been careless, a text I forgot to delete, a small slip in the carefully crafted facade I had built. I walked in that day, and I knew. The air was different, heavier. He was holding my phone, his face a mask of hurt and anger. The confrontation was inevitable. Words were thrown like daggers, accusations, and confessions colliding in a painful symphony. How could you? He demanded, his voice breaking. What could I say? That I was lost? That I was searching for something, anything, that made me feel alive? It all sounded so selfish, so cruel when I tried to put it into words. I tried to explain, to make him see it from my perspective. But how do you justify betrayal? How do you tell someone you love that they're not enough anymore? The room was spinning with anger and heartache, a tornado destroying the last remnants of the life we had built together. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the man I married, the man I had vowed to love and cherish. But it was too late. The damage was done, and there was no going back. The trust we had, it was shattered, lying in pieces at our feet. That night, I left. I left the house we had called home, the life we had built, and the man who had loved me through it all. I walked away, my heart heavy with a guilt that I knew would never really leave me. I had made my choice, and now I had to live with it, whatever that meant. There's something about confessing that's supposed to be freeing, right? Like a weight lifted off your shoulders. But when I finally told him, when the words, "I've been having an affair," came out, it didn't feel freeing. It felt like I was shattering something precious, something that could never be put back together. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just stood there, looking at me with a mix of disbelief and agony that made my stomach churn. Why? That was all he could muster. The simplest question, yet the hardest to answer. How do you explain that you've fallen for someone else? That the life you built together isn't enough anymore? I couldn't. So, I just stood there, watching the man I had shared my life with crumble right in front of me. Moving out was a blur. I packed my things amidst the silence that hung heavy in our home. It was like moving through a dream, or more accurately, a nightmare. Every picture, every piece of clothing, a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. And for what? A fling with my personal trainer? It felt shallow, foolish even, but I was in too deep to back out now. Telling the kids was the hardest part. How do you look into your children's eyes and tell them that their mom is leaving? That their family, as they know it, is over? I tried to explain, to soften the blow, but their eyes, so much like their father's, just stared back at me, filled with confusion and hurt. Mommy's made a mistake, I said, my voice barely a whisper. But no words could make it right. No words could erase the pain I was causing. The new life with Jake was everything it promised to be, thrilling, passionate, a constant adventure. We moved in together, into a chic apartment that felt worlds away from the suburban home I had left. Dinners out, parties, weekends away, it was a whirlwind of excitement. I was the center of his world, and he was mine. But even amidst the laughter and love, there was a nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach, a constant reminder of the price of this happiness. I'd called the kids, but the conversations were short, strained. They were polite, but the warmth was gone, replaced by a courteous distance that broke my heart. How's school? I'd ask, trying to bridge the gap that was widening with each passing day. Fine, they'd reply, and that would be the end of it. I was an outsider now, a visitor in their lives. Jake didn't seem to notice the turmoil inside me. He was living in the moment, and I was just a part of that. Sometimes I'd catch myself watching him, wondering if this was really it, if this was what I had torn my world apart for. The glamour, the excitement, it was intoxicating, but beneath it all, there was an emptiness that no amount of fun or passion could fill. Nights were the hardest. Lying in bed, in a room that didn't feel like mine, I'd think of them, my husband, my kids. I'd wonder what they were doing, if they were okay. The life I had left behind seemed like a distant memory, but the ache it left behind was as fresh as ever. I had made my choice, and now I was living it, one day at a time, trying to convince myself that this was happiness. Divorce. A word I never thought I'd associate with myself. Yet there I was, signing papers that would officially end my marriage. It felt surreal, like I was a character in some tragic movie. But this was my life, unraveling one signature at a time. The meetings with lawyers were cold, clinical. Numbers, assets, custody. Everything reduced to paperwork. My soon-to-be ex-husband and I, once inseparable, now sat on opposite sides of the table, our conversations mediated through attorneys. The financial reality hit me like a ton of bricks. Legal fees piled up, and living without the comfort of a shared income was tougher than I'd imagined. I'd been naive, thinking Jake and I could coast on love and passion. But love doesn't pay the bills. Rent, utilities, groceries, the costs of living independently were a slap in the face. I started to cut corners, skip dinners out, but it was barely making a dent. Meanwhile, Jake, my beacon of excitement, started to change. Or maybe he was always this way, and I was too blinded by infatuation to see it. He grew distant, his texts less frequent, his excuses more. Work, he'd say, or a friend in need. I could sense his interest waning, but I clung to him, afraid of what letting go meant. Back in my old life, my husband was adjusting to his new role as a single father. I'd hear snippets from the kids during our brief, awkward calls. Dad made pancakes today, they'd say, or, Dad helped me with my homework. It stung, hearing about these moments that I used to be a part of. I wanted to be happy for them, that they were adjusting, but each word was a reminder of what I had given up, what I had lost. The distance between me and my family grew with each passing day. The kids, once my whole world, now seemed like distant relatives. I missed birthdays, school events, moments I used to cherish. It wasn't intentional. Life just got in the way, or at least that's what I told myself. The truth was, I didn't know how to face them, how to look into their eyes knowing I was the cause of their pain. So, I stayed away, telling myself it was better for everyone. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, the reality of my choices settled in. The life I had jumped into so eagerly was losing its shine. Jake was around less and less, his once warm gaze now cold and distant. My finances were a mess, a jumble of unpaid bills and mounting debts. And my family, the people who used to be my anchor, felt like strangers. It's funny, isn't it? How you think you're moving towards something better, only to find out you've been running in the wrong direction. I was learning that the hard way, with every empty night and every unanswered text. The glamorous life I thought I was stepping into turned out to be a mirage, and I was left in the desert, alone and lost. Word travels fast in a small town, especially when it's juicy gossip. Did you hear about her? That's what they were saying, the her being me. The whispers were everywhere, at the grocery store, the gym, even at the kids' school. I could feel their eyes on me, their hushed tones a constant reminder of my fall from grace. I tried to shrug it off, act like it didn't bother me, but who was I kidding? It stung, each word a sharp jab at my already bruised ego. Then came the bombshell that knocked the wind out of me. Jake, my Jake, the man for whom I had turned my life upside down, was seen around town with someone else. A younger woman, someone said. It's not true, I told myself, refusing to believe it. He wouldn't do that to me, not after everything. I confronted him, demanding answers. It's just rumors, he said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. I wanted to believe him, so I did, pushing away the nagging doubts. But you can only lie to yourself for so long. I saw them, Jake and her, laughing together at our favorite cafe. It was like a scene from a movie, the kind where the world stops spinning for a moment. There they were, in plain sight, him with his arm around her, a sight so painfully familiar yet so utterly foreign. My heart sank, a mix of betrayal and humiliation washing over me. I remember walking up to them, my feet moving on their own. The cafe went quiet, all eyes on the unfolding drama. Is this her? I asked, my voice louder than I intended. Jake looked up, surprise quickly turning into annoyance. We need to talk, he said, but I was past talking. I was angry, hurt, broken. The argument that followed was a blur of accusations and denials. How could you? I yelled, my voice shaking with emotion. You're one to talk, he shot back, a cruel reminder of my own infidelity. It was a mess, our dirty laundry aired for all to see. I had become the talk of the town, a cautionary tale of what happens when you throw away your life for a fling. As I stormed out of the cafe, the weight of my choices crashing down on me, I realized how far I had fallen. From a respected wife and mother to the woman scorned, a victim of the same betrayal I had once inflicted. It was a bitter pill to swallow, a harsh lesson in the consequences of our actions. I had lost everything, my family, my dignity, and now, the man I thought was my future. In that moment, walking away from the whispers and the judging eyes, I felt more alone than ever. I had gambled it all for a dream, a fantasy, and now I was left with nothing but the harsh reality of my decisions. The day Jake told me it was over, it felt like the ground beneath me had given way. I can't do this anymore, he said, his voice void of the warmth I'd grown so used to. Just like that, the last piece of the life I'd scrambled to build came crashing down. I begged, I pleaded, but his mind was made up. He wanted someone else, someone not wrapped up in a messy past. I was left alone, the irony of the situation not lost on me. In a daze, I found myself driving past the house I once called home, the one I shared with my husband and kids. It looked the same, yet everything had changed. Taking a deep breath, I knocked on the door, my heart pounding in my chest. When he opened it, the look on his face said it all. Surprise, confusion, a hint of disdain. I made a mistake, I told him, the words barely a whisper. Can we try again? The desperation in my voice was foreign even to myself. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the hurt I had caused, the scars that were still healing. You left us, he said, his voice steady, you made your choice. His refusal hit me like a physical blow. I had hoped, foolishly, for a second chance, but standing there, on the doorstep of my former life, I realized some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The financial reality of my new life was brutal. I was jobless, with savings that were rapidly dwindling. Rent, bills, everyday expenses, they don't stop just because your world does. I started looking for work, but my absence from the workforce made it tough. Rejection after rejection, each one a reminder of the stable life I had so recklessly thrown away. As for my friends, well, they scattered. The ones I thought would stick by me through thick and thin slowly drifted away. Maybe it was the drama, the scandal, or maybe they just didn't know what to say. Either way, I was alone, truly alone. Coffee dates, girls' nights, the casual chats, all gone. I'd reach out, but the responses were brief, noncommittal. I couldn't blame them, really. I had become a cautionary tale, the person they whispered about when they thought I wasn't listening. Every day was a struggle, a battle to find some semblance of normalcy in the chaos I had created. I'd wake up in the morning, staring at the ceiling, wondering how things had gone so wrong. The job search, the mounting bills, the loneliness, it was a constant, suffocating presence. I missed my kids, missed being a part of their lives. But the gap I had created was too wide, the hurt too deep. There were moments, brief flashes, where I'd catch a glimpse of the woman I used to be. But they were just that, moments. The reality was, I was a shadow of my former self, lost in a world of my own making. The choices I had made, the paths I had taken, had led me here, to this place of regret and longing. And as each day passed, I couldn't help but wonder if this was it, if this was the life I was doomed to live because of a mistake that couldn't be undone. The legal battle was like a never-ending storm, each meeting with the lawyers more draining than the last. It wasn't just about dividing assets anymore. It was a war, a fight to salvage what little dignity I had left. The papers were a maze of accusations and demands, a bitter reminder of how far we had fallen from the couple who once vowed to love each other forever. In the midst of this chaos, my world shrunk to the size of my tiny apartment. The walls, once a symbol of my newfound freedom, now felt like they were closing in on me. Friends, the few I had left, stopped calling. My phone, once buzzing with messages and invites, now lay silent most days. I'd wander the streets, just to escape the loneliness that hung over me like a dark cloud. Meanwhile, my husband, or rather, my soon-to-be ex-husband, was finding his stride. I'd hear about it, bits and pieces from mutual acquaintances. He's doing well, they'd say, a hint of surprise in their voices. It was as if they expected him to crumble, to fall apart without me. But he didn't. He picked up the pieces and started anew. Work, hobbies, the kids, he filled his life with things that mattered, things that helped him move forward. Speaking of the kids, they became distant, their voices cold and formal during our rare conversations. "Mom, I'm busy," became a common refrain. I couldn't blame them. In their eyes, I was the villain of their story, the parent who put her selfish desires above their happiness. Their resentment was a bitter pill to swallow, a constant ache in my heart. To add to my woes, I lost my job. The company was downsizing, they said, but I knew the truth. My personal life had spilled over, staining my professional reputation. I was the woman who had walked out on her family, and that stigma followed me like a shadow. Job interviews went nowhere, my once promising career a casualty of the choices I had made. The financial strain was suffocating. Bills piled up, reminders of the life I once had, a life of comfort and security. I started selling things, anything to make ends meet. First, it was the jewelry, then the designer clothes, pieces of a past life that now seemed like a distant dream. Each day was a battle, a struggle to find a reason to keep going. The divorce, the isolation, the resentment from my kids, the job loss, it was a relentless wave, crashing over me, leaving me gasping for air. I was a shell of the woman I used to be, lost in a sea of regret and despair. The choices I had made echoed around me, a constant reminder of the life I had destroyed. I'd sit in my empty apartment, the silence deafening, and wonder how it all went wrong. How the woman who once had everything ended up with nothing. It was a harsh lesson, one I was learning the hard way. Life, with all its twists and turns, had brought me here, to this moment of reckoning. And as I looked in the mirror, at the stranger staring back at me, I couldn't help but wonder if this was just the beginning of my fall. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. Eviction, the word loomed over me like a dark cloud, cold and final. There it was, the notice taped to my door, a stark reminder of how far I'd fallen. My apartment, my last semblance of independence, was slipping through my fingers. I remember sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes of my life, a life that was unraveling thread by thread. As if on cue with my downfall, news of Jake's engagement broke. It was like a slap in the face, the final confirmation of my naivety. He had moved on, found someone else, while I was still grappling with the pieces of my shattered existence. The engagement photos were everywhere, his smiling face and the young woman who had taken my place. It stung, not just the betrayal, but the realization of how easily I had been replaced. In that moment, the full weight of my actions hit me. The lies, the deceit, the hurt I had caused, it all came crashing down. I had been living in a bubble, blinded by my selfishness, and now reality was staring me right in the face. I had lost my husband, my home, my dignity, all for a fleeting fantasy. Meanwhile, my husband, or the man I once called mine, was finding happiness again. I heard it through the grapevine, whispers of him dating someone new. It was a strange feeling, a mix of relief and heartache. Relief that he was moving past the pain I had caused, and heartache that I was no longer a part of his life. In a moment of desperation, I reached out to him. Maybe it was the loneliness talking, or the fear of facing the world alone. I called, sent messages, pleading for a chance to talk, to explain. But there was only silence on the other end. My pleas fell on deaf ears, my apologies left unread. I had crossed a line, broken something that couldn't be mended with a few words. The realization that I was truly alone was sobering. No husband, no lover, no friends to turn to. The people I had once considered my world were now just distant memories, part of a life that I had willingly destroyed. Sitting amidst the boxes of my former life, I couldn't help but reflect on where it all went wrong. Each choice, each step that led me here, to this moment of utter despair. It was a hard pill to swallow, acknowledging that I was the architect of my own downfall. I thought back to the days of laughter and love, the family dinners, the holidays, the simple joy of being together. And then I thought of the lies, the sneaking around, the thrill of the forbidden. It all seemed so insignificant now, so foolish. As I packed up the last of my belongings, I realized this was more than just a physical move. It was a shift in my reality, a step into the unknown. The life I had known, the person I had been, it was all gone. All I had left were the lessons from my mistakes, the scars from my choices. I closed the door to my apartment, my former life, for the last time. The future was uncertain, a path uncharted. But one thing was clear: I was starting over, a journey not of redemption, but of self-discovery, a chance to find the person I had lost along the way. The day the divorce was finalized felt like the closing of a book, a story that ended not with a happily ever after, but with a stark period. I sat there in the lawyer's office, staring at the divorce decree, a piece of paper that nullified years of love, laughter, and shared dreams. It was done. We were officially no longer husband and wife. The finality of it was overwhelming, a definitive end to a chapter of my life. The loneliness that followed was palpable. It's one thing to be alone, quite another to feel loneliness in your bones. The silence of the apartment was deafening, a stark contrast to the noise and warmth of the life I once had. I missed the chatter, the bickering, even the mundane routines. Now, it was just me, with my thoughts and regrets for company. My attempts to reconnect with old friends fell flat. I reached out, but the responses were lukewarm, noncommittal. Invitations to social gatherings stopped coming. I'd see pictures on social media, gatherings I once would have been a part of. It was clear I had become an outcast, a pariah. The community that had once embraced me now gave me the cold shoulder, a constant reminder of the social cost of my actions. The hardest blow, however, came from my children. The few strained interactions we had dwindled to nothing. Calls went unanswered, texts ignored. The pain of their rejection cut deeper than anything else. I was their mother, yet I had become a stranger to them. The realization that I had irrevocably damaged the most precious relationships in my life was a burden I struggled to bear. In the midst of this desolation, I tried to start over. I looked for new job opportunities, tried to pick up new hobbies, even considered moving to a new city. But each attempt fizzled out, hampered by my own lack of conviction and the weight of my past. It was as if I was stuck in quicksand, every effort to climb out only pulling me further down. There were moments when I'd catch my reflection in the mirror and hardly recognize the woman staring back. Where there was once confidence and joy, now there was only uncertainty and sorrow. The vibrant person I once was seemed like a distant memory, a stark contrast to the shell I had become. I longed for a fresh start, a chance to rewrite my story, but the past clung to me like a shadow. The label of the woman who walked out on her family, who betrayed those she loved, was a hard one to shake off. It followed me, tainting my interactions, coloring people's perceptions of me. The journey to rebuild my life was a road filled with setbacks and disappointments. Each step forward was a struggle, weighed down by the guilt and regret of my choices. The path to redemption, to finding a new sense of self, seemed a distant dream, clouded by the harsh reality of my circumstances. As I lay in bed each night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder if this was it. If this was the life I had carved out for myself through my mistakes. A life of solitude, of lost connections, a life where starting over felt like an insurmountable task. The finality of the divorce, the loneliness, the rejection. It was a bitter pill, a constant reminder of the cost of my choices. Sometimes, late at night, I can't help but wonder about him, about how he's doing. I heard through the grapevine that he's been doing well, surprisingly well, considering the hurricane I left in my wake. They say he's changed, grown from the whole ordeal. I guess pain has a way of doing that to you, turning the wounds into wisdom. I saw a picture of him the other day, smiling, genuinely smiling. It was a group photo at some community event, and there he was, right in the middle, looking happier than I'd remembered. He had this new confidence, a sense of peace that was never there before. It's weird, seeing him move on, build a life that I'm no longer a part of. I felt a pang of something not quite jealousy, but maybe a sense of loss, of what could have been. My own life, in contrast, feels like it's stuck in a perpetual storm. The descent into despair wasn't sudden, it was gradual, like slowly sinking into quicksand. The full extent of what I've lost hits me at the most unexpected moments, seeing a family laughing together, hearing a song we used to love, random memories that creep up and catch me off guard. The nights are the hardest. That's when the reality really sets in, the crushing weight of the loneliness and the choices I've made. There's this gnawing emptiness, a void that I can't seem to fill. The laughter, the warmth, the love that used to fill my days, it's all gone now. And in its place, a deafening silence, a reminder of the consequences of my actions. I've had my moment of truth, more times than I can count. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing that I've lost everything that truly mattered. My family, my friends, the life we built together, all sacrificed for a fleeting moment of passion, a mistake that can never be undone. The realization is like a cold splash of water, a harsh awakening to the reality I've created. And now, I'm left to face it all alone. The consequences, the fallout, it's all on me. The choices I made, the hurt I caused, it's like a shadow that follows me, a constant reminder of the past. There are moments when I desperately wish I could turn back time, make different choices. But life doesn't work that way. We have to live with the decisions we make, carry the burdens of our mistakes. It's a strange feeling, seeing him move on, embracing life with a newfound zest. Part of me is happy for him, genuinely so. He deserves happiness, a chance to rebuild what I tore down. But another part of me can't help but feel left behind, stuck in the aftermath of the storm I created. The reality of my situation is harsh, unyielding. I'm left to navigate this new world on my own. A world where I'm no longer a wife, no longer a part of the family I once held dear. Every day is a challenge, a struggle to find some sense of purpose, some semblance of peace. So here I am, facing the consequences of my choices, alone. It's a journey, a painful path of self-discovery and acceptance. A journey to find forgiveness, not from him or from anyone else, but from myself. Because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to: learning to live with the choices we've made, finding a way to move forward, even when it feels like the world has stopped